It's a new podcast where I aim to bring in some strong men and see what wisdom we can extract from them for the benefit of the generation of young boys that we are who potentially don't have father figures. And for the first online episode, we have the one and only Elliot Hulse.
Thanks for having me, Hamza. I think what you're doing is great, buddy.
Thank you. So Elliot, could you give us a elevator pitch for anyone who doesn't know you?
I'm a strong man, strength coach, father of four, father figure to perhaps millions of men worldwide through my YouTube channels. And I make men strong. That's my job, both inside and out.
I love that. I love that purpose. And I'm not sure if you can see it on my wall, but I actually have your purpose statement right there as well. Make men strong again. I think what you're doing is fantastic. Elliot has been uploading videos consistently for 6, 7, 8 years. I've been watching since university, which was about 5 years ago.
I uploaded my first video in 2007.
Oh, those were the original breathe into your balls. I remember the original videos you did.
Yeah, that was like 2012. I started making YouTube videos when YouTube first came out. So I'm kind of an OG here making YouTube videos.
That's impressive. I remember one of your older videos. I think it was a celebration for maybe 1 million subscribers. You were out in the rain and it was a very, very masculine speech that you gave. And I rewatched it. I remember seeing it a while ago, but I rewatched it recently. And I was so inspired by the way that you took so much time to just thank all of your mentors and everyone you had learned from, the Hodge twins and the guys you've previously trained. And it brought into light the requirements of manhood seems to be like having a tribe of mentors. So I really appreciated that you made that video.
Yeah, my pleasure. Men know each other through the reflection of other men, namely the reflection of our fathers. Men need to be seen by other men. Unlike women who get a certain grace from God, men are valued for what they become and what they can do. And the only way we can figure that out or learn about that is through other men.
That's a very good point. So we'll begin this podcast with something pretty interesting. So Elliot, if you'd like to join me for a visualization where we close our eyes and to just imagine a young boy, his father's not around. And so he's growing up life quite feminine and he turns into a young adult. What do you think he would struggle with?
Identity. As boys and girls come into the world through our mothers, we know everything of our mothers from her heartbeat to the food she eats. It's what pieces our bodies together in the womb. And even when we come out of our mother's womb, she's still our primary source of nourishment, sustenance, care. It's a mommy's world until a young man begins to look up and look out. And a young lady can continue to find her identity in the mother because she's a woman, she's a girl. But a young man at some point has to seek outside of the bond with his mother for an identity. And that's why God created marriage, so that we would have fathers available for young men to look up and out when the time is right, away from the mother, and then an atonement with something greater, a greater calling, a set aside calling that is uniquely masculine.
What do you think the consequences that this young boy or the generation of boys don't have that masculine identity?
Well, we don't have to look very far. One of the statistics that's well known is that 100% of the violent mass shooting crimes that have unfolded over the course of maybe the past 10 years have all been executed by fatherless boys. Fatherless boys grow up to be more depressed, more addicted to drugs, more apt to commit crimes, more likely to be obese, all the bad things. All the bad roads that we can go down has been found scientifically to be a result of fatherlessness. So it's not to say that mothers aren't good or that mothers can't do their jobs, but it requires two. Even for little girls, there is a boundary that is set by fathers. There's expectations that are set by fathers that mothers they're just not equipped to do. And it's okay. Just like we're not equipped to bear and care and nurse our children, right? We don't have breasts, right? There are certain things that women can do that we can't do, but there are certain things that are required of men for the development of the youth that only a man can do. And in our fatherless age, we are experiencing the consequences of removing the father from the home.
And why do you think the father has been removed from the home?
Well, it's been a plan of Satan's for the longest time to remove the father, the head, the leader from our cultures and from our homes so that the women and children could be dependent on the Lord of this world, which manifests itself as the state. And if we look at the postmodern Marxist world that we live in, and we trace back throughout history to see where this all started to sort of unfold, particularly in the West, I would say it began with the Bolshevik Revolution of the early 1900s, 1913, 1914, when the Marxist communists wanted to take over Russia and subsequently Eastern Europe. They did it through violence. They did it through force. They did it through bombs and bullets. These revolutionaries were physically violent people, but they understood after many attempts that their communist utopia wouldn't take fold in the West, particularly in America, because the working class in America was quickly being absorbed into the middle class. Americans were doing well in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. I think particularly of the Black family that was much more conservative at the time. There was much less children being born out of wedlock, even more than the white people. There was more church going. There was more reverence and acknowledgement of the values of tradition. And so when the Marxists, through the ideology of cultural Marxism that was brought forth by Antonio Gramsci and Mark Lukács, manifested itself in what is called the Frankfurt School that took root in Columbia University in New York in the late 1930s. By the way, these men and women were from Germany, where they tried their best to do what they needed to do. It didn't work because Hitler had risen to power, and 100% of the cultural Marxists that moved to the West were Jews. And a part of their plan to subvert the culture was not by violence per se, bombs and bullets, but was ideological subversion, was to corrupt the culture. And their stated goals were to, well, if I could boil it down, to remove the Father, both remove God the Father from our lives by turning us into atheists and turning us against the Lord, as well as removing the Father from the home by pitting the genders against each other through confusion and feminism, as well as the advent of full acceptance of contraception, which leads to fornication and we call sexual liberation. It actually turns out to be sexual slavery. A few of their other plots and plans were to promote excessive drinking, to take over the media and the schools, and to destroy every last standing tradition that allowed the West to be the mighty nation that it once was. So this has been a strategic takedown of the culture, and that can only happen if the leaders in the culture, if the strong people in the cultures, the boundary setters in the cultures are emasculated and removed. And so here we are now today in an atheistic world with no reverence for the divine, as well as a fatherless world with absolutely no respect for the father, and men who are too weak to garner the respect that's due to them. So the subversion has been complete. They're winning.
There's a quote, kill the father, kill the nation, which I heard from Hard Times Create Strong Men.
Correct.
He even talks about the submersion, which is almost like imagine if you play video games, it's kind of like a sneak attack where the enemy doesn't exactly know that they're being attacked as it would be in a normal conventional war that we all know of. And instead it's by normalizing ideas which cause that society to break down from inside. When I first heard this, like must have been years ago, but I thought it was just, a silly conspiracy theory. They're saying that, we're getting attacked from inside. What's this? But the more and more that I look into it, it seems to be a scary reality, and it seems to be deathly effective.
Oh, yeah.
So on an individual level, what do you think could help this young man who's fatherless?
Well, we can only look forward. In order to look forward, we got to look backwards. We got to look at what worked before we got into the place that we are right now. And so in a way, I'm kind of a throwback in my values and what I perceive as virtues for the world. And one of the institutions, which is the main institution of a culture, the building block of a culture, is its families. And, you mentioned that, remove the father and you destroy the culture. Well, the reason why that works is because you destroy the family. And so a part of my mission in making men strong again is actually to make families strong again, because let me put it this way, a man's going to die, a man's going to turn to dust. And if we don't think to the future in a generative way in terms of our wives and our children and raising them to be the men and women that God called us to be, then there's no hope for the future.
I like that. So the family is the future, and potentially the route that we can go about to restore some kind of balance is making make men good fathers and try and make the family a more secure unit.
Correct. Yeah. And the cultural Marxists, I may refer to them as progressives or lefties. They hate the family. They hate the family. They've been using various subtle attacks from all angles to destroy the family. One of the most recent examples could be seen in the Black Lives Matter movement, which is led by 3 Black lesbian Marxists that hate men. And so they use men as pawns in order to, develop their demise. But there's no love for Black men in Black Lives Matter. And you know that's true because if you looked at their website and what they stand for and what their mission was just a year ago, they've changed it because people, when they show their cards and people realize what's going on, they have to take it back. But I have a screenshot of what they said, and they are against what they call the heteronormative family structure. And what they want is a dissolution of the family and some sort of a utopian vision of a tribal society where the quote unquote village raises the children. The problem with that is that we don't all hold the same values. Part of the subversion has been the inclusion, right? This is one of their weaponized words, inclusion of all kinds of cultures, which is fine, but ideas that do not vibe with what got us where we are today. And so as much as we could make fantasy out of what life could have or was like before the family, which I don't think that really ever existed, the fact is that the family as it was created in the beginning is what's required for us to succeed, not some made up progressive utopian idea about quote unquote love. Love is not what the world has told us it is. We're experiencing a perversion of that so that the family could be perverted.
What is love?
Well, the world tells us that love is an emotional thing. The world tells us that love is a feeling, that in order to a family to stay together, a mother and father need to be head over heels with one another, swept off their feet, and always having gushy, good, giddy feelings about one another. Addiction to good emotion is what leads men astray because it's more of a feminine way of being. Women are more interested in getting along and feeling good feelings, when men are more inclined to protect, to provide, and to create true progress, which is through the family. And so with that, a father's love is more of a rational love. A mother's love is more emotional, which is appropriate, but a father's love is a rational love. It's about setting boundaries, knowing what's right, and leading your family in a way that maybe is counterculture to our Disneyfied world, but is rooted in tradition and has always worked and will continue to work. This is a term called patriarchy. Patriarchy is literally father's rule. Patriarchy is a term that means father's rule. And so the call of the Marxists and the feminists for the past 100 years has been smash the patriarchy. That means smash the father and smash the father's rule, remove the father's rule. And I don't have to reiterate it, but we're all very privy to and aware of what that has done to us and where we are today.
That's a very, very good statement. And I've never actually seen it defined as patriarchy is father's rule, but that completely makes sense. And now I can almost visualize, let's say, feminists in some kind of march or protest and literally saying, smash the patriarchy, end the patriarchy. And it is exactly what their intentions have been, especially in modern feminism. And that's where we found ourselves today. And a point that you made previous was that the Black Lives Matter protesters, their goal is to essentially take out the father from the family and then have the village raise the family. And I think historically that has been a fact that the village does raise the family. But you made the fantastic point that the village had shared values back then, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. We were all part of one small community. We all went to the same church or mosque together. We all held the same values and beliefs and boundaries with each other. And quite frankly, do you want that random woman across your road to raise your child these days? We're not that same type of community anymore. Even
worse is the state. With this type of quote unquote progress, the whole idea is to make the government your God. And so even if we were living in a time where communities were still strong, they would be weakened because of all of our exported services. And it's as simple as, do we even create our own food? No, my food comes from California and I live in Florida. Do we educate our own children? No. The dictates of the educators they're receiving come from the federal government. They don't come from my community. Healthcare and the care of an individual's mind and soul used to be cared for by the religious community. No longer is that the case. We've removed God, we've removed religion. And so you go to a state licensed psychoanalyst rather than to your priest. So they say community, but they don't even actually mean community. What they mean is their Lord and God, the government.
I can see the links between the statement. I think you made it at the start of this call, and I've seen it in, I believe it was the same audiobook, Hard Times, Great Strong Men. The idea that the state and the government has replaced the father in the family. The father is no longer needed. And I think this potentially links to the death of the marriage and the rise of divorce, where women are pushed to divorce, and with the idea that 200 years ago, it wasn't legal, but they just wouldn't have been able to survive like that. And so there was a huge reason to stay together, because the father is the figure who gives that parental provisioning love, which the mother couldn't provide back then. But now essentially the mother can divorce the father and the state will pay for it.
Right. And always sides with the mother.
That's it. So it's very easy for a fatherless family to, I don't even know what the correct word would be, to exist. It's very easy for them to exist because you no longer need that masculine role model to go and at least work and provide. And so is there hope for that young man, the young boy that we've visualized, who his father's been, let's say, divorced, or he's left the family, and his mother's just raising him by himself, and the village that's helping raise him is his feminine teachers in school and the feminine society and media? It's not even special that we see young men with these type of problems where they're addicted, they are so demasculated and directionless. And although it might be true that our physical health is better than ever than 100, 200 years ago, our mental and definitely spiritual health is at all times low.
Right.
What's that kid supposed to do?
Well, if we pull back and look from God's point of view, this is not something new. The Old Testament seems to be a book that reads like cycles. These things just keep happening. We follow the law of God and we honor him in our lives and we live our lives righteously. And then we forget. And then we start to worship ourselves. We start worshiping government. I mean, that's what the Tower of Babel was all about. We think that we can do it. We can do it on our own. We don't need God, and we kick God out. But every time, in all ways, and what we can expect is that at some point, God exacts his justice and says, okay, guys, you can't do this any longer. This is an abomination of my creation. You're going the wrong way. You need a course correction. We see things like the flood, right? And we see the things like the demolition of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. We see even where God has made his will known to certain people like Jonah, who is required to step up and say, hey, say to his government and say to his king, guys, God is not pleased with what we're doing. There's going to be a tribulation. There's going to be justice. This just seems to happen over and over again. And I think we can expect it here just about any time now. There are planned, created chaos that maybe God is allowing to happen so that there is a breakdown of what exists so that he could build us back up again. And so in a sort of colloquial way to say this, the barbarians are at the door. And once they're in and chaos ensues, then everything goes back to order. It always does, because God's law is natural law. And so if the barbarians, in other words, that's a symbol for chaos, create the havoc that is cyclical in nature, we can expect that we're going to face some very, very, very hard times. I know you quote Stephen Arnio in his book, Hard Times Create Strong Men. Well, that's what we can expect, hard times. I think we can expect hard times. And as a result, good will come of it. Men will grow strong again. Women will remember themselves, remember where they belong, and children will become respectful again, because that's what pressure does. That's what the pressures of nature do when we're left to ourselves without the God of our government. And so from a big picture point of view, I know that's not a beautiful point of view. That's not one that most people want to hear. They want, and what do I do right now? Then I have some ideas, but the bottom line is that the course will be corrected, whether we, like Jonah, step up and say, okay, we got to change course, let's do this, or not. And then there will be quite a bit of tribulation, chaos, pain to be suffered, right? If God is just, that means that we got to even the score here a little bit. And we've been way out of balance. So there will be this equalizing that's going to happen, this return to nature, this return to God that is not going to be a choice. It's not, women aren't going to say, oh, okay, we get it. No, it's going to be, no, the barbarians are banging on your door ready to rape and pillage. And if you don't listen to your husband, you don't listen to the man. If you don't fall in line with the protectors, then you're going to be destroyed. You know, this whole strong, independent idea with regard to women is fabricated. It's made up. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a strong, independent woman. There's such thing as a good wife and good mother. That's how it works. That's how it always worked. And nature will call us back to that. In the meantime, what do? Well, Hamza, you're doing a great job. Part of what I see my mission here and purpose on earth is to spread these ideas, spread information. You know, every revolution begins with a change of mind. And so the young men that are watching your YouTube channel that are starting to wake up, you yourself, I'm sure, had that moment where you were able to see, whoa, okay, we're not going the right way. I know I've had that moment in my life. We need more of that kind of awakening. We need more men to awaken. And I think what's going to come pretty soon is that these awakened men or men who are forced to awaken to the realities of things are going to be called and ready to step into action in our communities to stand up for what's right and to turn down what's wrong. I saw a really interesting news article headline the other day about a school in Louisiana that was overrun by chaos. It was not just the post-COVID chaos of, you know, social distancing and masks, and it wasn't just the ideological subversion reaching its peak through critical race theory. These were Black men. The children were behaving badly, and the school administrators, mostly women, couldn't handle them. So the fathers of the community, this is a beautiful story. Something like 50 fathers decided to go to the school themselves. And as the fathers stayed and patrolled and monitored and created boundaries in the school, they were the disciplinarians. All chaos ceased. Everything went back to order by mere presence of these fathers. Just knowing that the fathers were there caused everyone to stop and think twice before they began to act in bad ways.
You made a lot of fantastic points there. And Joe, it's very exhilarating, scary, and excite. There's so many emotions that come when we think about the cycle of good times creates weak men. And one of the things that I've tried to really focus on my channel is to push this message that the good times that we're in with the easy access to porn and to junk food, it's not a good thing. That you don't want to be one of those weak men when the barbarians are at the door, as you said. And it sounds so unrealistic for us to discuss something like that because people in my generation and even yours, we've never experienced a true war. We've never experienced any like real level of personal casualty from the majority of people. But it is realistic just because we've never experienced it, just because we have the safety of the internet to speak to whatever country we become at war with. The thing is there is a country and there is a nation and a community whose fathers are still strong, whose fathers are still relied upon. And not to sound like, you know, anti-patriotic, but they would have to win. It's how society, it's how the cycle every 40, 80 years, as Stefan Arnio would say, it's how the cycle repeats itself. The nation, we win like, let's say, the Great War, as we did 100 years ago and 70 years ago. And the plunder and comfort of that victory of some big war gives us that level of comfort that then causes us to be weak. And then the weak men just have to be destroyed by the country who are still strong, who still have the strong fathers. And my vision, like I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, of how best I could try and help the generation of men and the 100,000 young men who are looking to me. And it's almost like this idea of trying to ride that wave. Like the strong man will be in demand. We all talk about in business, you know, get some skills that are in demand. Well, being a strong masculine man, being a man of confidence and discipline, that is going to be one of the highest skills in demand very, very soon. And it's fantastic that right now, if there's any young men watching this, that those are some traits that you're trying to pick up and learn, and you're learning from people like Elliot. It's an uncertain future that we have. And I do predict chaos relatively soon. And I've been saying this for a while, and not, you do seem like a patriotic guy, but one of the mindsets I've had is like, I can't see America being the dominant country for that much longer. Is that something you've thought about at all?
Oh, I agree. And I don't think that's the plan. America as a country, as it stands today, has not lived up to God's plan for it. And so retribution, justice will be exacted. But America has something unique in in its ideology and its root, where it came from, and what was to unfold that was subverted. And I think the idea of America will still stand in its remnant, small seeds and embering fires throughout the states. Florida, where I live in particular, is emblematic of that remnant and that ability to thrive in this evil world, with some hope that we could take back our sovereignty. And I think the founding fathers were ingenious in their recognizing the sovereignty of the state above and over the federal government, because who knows better how the people need to be governed and what's important for them than a man of their own breed, a man of their own state. So America will balkanize. I'm pretty sure it's balkanized as is. It's already split up in a myriad of different ways. So I am hopeful that the remnant will stand. It may end up morphing into a very different, take a different form than the 50 United States as we experience it right now. But one thing that the founding fathers understood, because they studied history, was that as a government grows and exacts tyranny upon its people, it always moves towards genocide. Always, every single case. All we got to look at is the 600 million people that have died at the hands of communism, both in Europe, Eastern Europe, and China, and so forth. They always go in that direction. The Second Amendment is the Second Amendment for a reason, because we are the people. I mean, even the Constitution starts with "we are the people." It's us. It's a government of the people. It's been subverted, but the founding documents are written by men that understood that this was going to come, this was going to happen, and the people had better be given grace to protect themselves. So, the barbarians might be at our door, but the American people are the largest standing army as is. For every one American, there are 4 firearms existing, 4 to 8. I forget what the number is, but if you could just imagine, that's quite an armory, and we're quite an army ourselves, and we could turn them against ourselves, and and maybe that happens from time to time. But when the barbarians knock at the door, we will know exactly why we still have our weapons. We're the only country left that has that right.
So you mentioned earlier about the strong, independent woman, and that's something that we see a lot these days. And I think, so that's been brought on by feminism in the last 100 years. And I'd like to explore, how much do you think feminism has potentially led to this dynamic of the fatherless generation?
Well, that's the plan. The feminist agenda from the beginning was to destroy the family. And if you study the roots of feminism in its truth, not what we're taught in school, it had nothing to do with equal rights or values. Women always had a strong place in society. Women knew that if they raised good children in their homes, that the culture, the society would thrive with the values that were pertinent in the home. This so-called movement to give women voting rights was nothing more than a plot to turn the husbands and wives against each other. They understood that men generally are conservative. Conservatism, traditionalism is a masculine trait, because men build things up so that we can protect them. We build a family so we can protect them. We build a state, a city, a country so that we can protect it. And they understood that if we can cancel the man's vote in his home by giving his wife, women who tend to be a bit more emotional, a bit more egalitarian, a bit more wanting, quote unquote, equality, which is a weaponized word, by the way. It doesn't mean what we think it means, that they would vote for things that would destroy. And so, for example, right, and I say things sometimes that maybe come across a little bit harsh, but you got to understand my position. My parents are immigrants to this country. My parents are from Belize. I'm a first generation American. My parents taught me the value of America and through the hard work that they did and their upward mobility. My parents literally lived on dirt floors in dirt huts. This is how my father and my mother were raised. And they came to America the right way. They paid their dues. They did what they had to do, and they're contributing citizens to this country right now. Open borders is a different story. Open borders is about flooding the culture with people who are not of the same mindset as my parents. And so, as is with all peoples, building borders creates safety, right? So, for example, I have land. I'm living on my land right now. I have fences around my land. Why do I have fences around my land? So that unsavory characters and energies don't make their way in. It's normal. It's natural. You wouldn't leave your front door wide open for anybody or anything to come in. But a woman who you could pull at her heartstrings a little bit more, right? So you can cause her to forget rationale. You could cause her to forget to be logical, and you could just use sensation to draw her into her physical, emotional state, and they will vote for things like open borders. Now, would you vote for a wide open house? No, you wouldn't do that to your house. Would you vote for a wide open for anybody to come into your family and take what they want, contribute nothing, and in fact denigrate and destroy your home? No, you wouldn't do that. You damn sure wouldn't do that if you had a husband there either. Hey, he ain't gonna let that shit happen. So feminism was designed to destroy the nation by destroying the family, by canceling the patriarch's power and his vote.
It's
another one is abortion.
Go on.
Right? No man would vote to kill his own baby. He would not stand by that, right? But when you give women that kind of power and you teach them that it is somehow empowering to be promiscuous, well, then they'll vote for things like abortion. Well, let's give us the right to kill our babies. Open borders, abortion, these are the things that feminism, these are the demons that feminism have let into our culture. It wouldn't happen in a patriarchy.
That was another fantastic point. And that would be related to the invention and the spread of birth control as well. And
right, contraception has been huge, a huge subversion. Just look at transgenderism today. No man would allow his son to take female hormones and cut off his penis so that he can become a girl. No man would allow that to happen. He would fight to his death to stop that from happening if he was a real man. But not so when we live in a matriarchy. I was at a convention for men this weekend, and a man spoke from the stage. He's in Texas, and he's fighting tooth and nail with the state to get rights of his son because his son's mother is forcing the child to become a girl. It's a boy. He's trying to become a girl. Only a woman would do that. A man wouldn't do that. And I'm not saying that women are bad and that men are not bad. I'm saying that these chaotic ways of being through the emotional state rather than rationale and what's good and what's right and what's true seem to slip through the fingers of females a little bit more easily than they are grasped by men. And look, I don't know how people view a religious literature and wisdom literature, but the Bible makes it very clear the nation of man and man and woman through the story of Genesis and Adam and Eve. It's not that Eve was a bad woman, it's that she was just more susceptible. Women are more open. She was more susceptible. She was more vulnerable to the whisperings of Satan. Now, the problem really was that Adam was being a weakling and he didn't protect his wife. He allowed that serpent in the garden and he didn't correct her. Instead, he went along with her. And there we have the fall of man and woman. And so there's a good reason why patriarchy unfolded the way it did. And it was a matter of protecting women from that type of subversion. But today we celebrate it.
And that celebration is not only problematic, but it becomes very, very tricky when everything you've just said is very politically incorrect. And it's things that, although you've got your own channel and you can essentially voice these facts, but the thing is, a normal young man holding these opinions, that man will be crucified for speaking of things like transgender and speaking ill of feminism, because they've got us in like a chokehold where to tap out we have to admit, oh yeah, everyone's right, like feminism's fantastic and transgender be whatever gender you want, because it's social suicide to not hold those viewpoints, because then you're sexist, you're misogynist, you're X. It's a very easy way. I think the Black Lives Matter movement is very easy for them to literally just go, yep, you're racist. As soon as you like disagree with anything, even if they're not going about it the right way, even if it seems problematic, you are instantly just branded as a bad person when you go against one of these movements. And that's something that's been tricky for my own developments. And it's interesting that you've brought up these points, because even on a side note with my relationship, my girlfriend has been truly finding her feminine energy, and it's been so interesting to see that like she's come to light, she's come to the awakening, and she realizes how detrimental her sort of strong, independent feminist upbringing has been, where she realizes now like it was almost hidden inside inside of her that she always wanted to be just like a girly girl. She always wanted to just be a stay-at-home, and like to be a mother was her ultimate goal. And, you know, she's really been aware of this, but all of her life she's been pushed into the career, and you don't need men and everything. And so now it's almost like she's defying her entire social circle and her family, apart from one, very, very interesting, apart from one friend who is like pretty much a hardcore Muslim. Like that's the one religious friend that she has. And so they're almost aligned now. But apart from that, it's so interesting seeing a woman awaken and realize that feminism was never on her side to begin with. And still to this day, you know, I'll see her kind of like almost as if there's like cameras like listening into us. She'll kind of give the disclaimer, but you know, equality is like very important. But I think they might have ruined my life for like 20 years. So it's very interesting. Right. It's what I'm interested in is trying to like, I don't know if this is too far-fetched, but to try and think of a way that we can kind of reverse this, to encourage women to be feminine again, to know that that's what makes them such a high value member of society, and a member to the family is more important. Because if the woman is I don't know which direction it should be, but if women should be feminine first, or if we should become more masculine first. But right now, the polarization that we have has been taken away. Feminism, interestingly, has convinced women that feminine traits are a bad thing. Women should not be submissive or agreeable. Women should be masculine. They should be dominant. They should get into the career. So feminism has said, okay, femininity is a bad thing. But then interestingly, feminism has also pushed femininity onto men, saying that men should be more feminine. So now the polar... That's
how you know it's a perversion.
That's true. That was the question I wanted to ask you, is it's starting to, you know, the dots are starting to connect for myself as well. And we've said before, the submersion that Stefan Anya has talked about. Do you think that that's potential, like feminism is potentially like a sneak attack from potentially like a different nation or something?
Oh yeah, like I said, it's a cultural Marxism. This was planned post World War II, when it's almost like you can't say Jew, but when the Jews were leaving Eastern Europe, they brought their wizardry. Some people call it Jewry. I'm not racist or whatever. Jews will tell you what happened to them, but they won't tell you why. And so what ended up happening is the communists won, because after the war, all of the think tanks, all the geniuses, all the brilliant evil minds imported to America, and we started unraveling their demise, their plan, their nefarious plans in our culture. So I think the first thing to understand is that this has been a deliberate attack. This is not natural progress. They like to use that word progress as if it's like God's just doing this. That's not the case at all. This is a demonic technology that they understood. They knew what was going to happen. So for example, Wilhelm Reich was one of these Frankfurt School professors who left Germany and came to the United States in order to unfold this plan. He knew, because of his deep study in psychology, right? He was a student of Freud's, and Freud has been weaponized, psychology has been weaponized, psychoanalysis has been weaponized, and Wilhelm Reich is no different. And he studied sexuality. He was very interested in the libido. And one of the things he understood, right? He was a revolutionary, 100% revolutionary. He hated his father. One of the things he understood was that now let me go back for a second. Lenin is known for saying that a revolution is dependent on the participation by women. You can't lead a revolution if you don't subvert the women. And that's something that I guess understood, they knew. Wilhelm Reich discovered that you can't pervert a woman one-on-one because women were so high in their standards, so high in their values. They were so discerning and had such strong boundaries because they had more to lose with sexual promiscuity. So women were more naturally, could I say naturally, based on the pressures of life, conservative. It was easy to pervert the men because you just tell men sex, their tongue hangs out, their dick gets hard, and they're like, oh, good. But women were more conservative. So they knew that they had to attack the woman's purity first. One of the things he discovered was that although he had a hard time of cracking the egg and breaking a woman open to turn her into a slut, essentially, he couldn't do it by himself. So what he learned was that because women are social beings, they will do what they see other women do. So they had to start creating, for example, in the 1960s, this whole, Woodstock movement was about getting women with other women that were behaving badly so that they felt like, well, okay, well, she's doing it. Universities are another petri dish for this mess. When you go to university, you can say, that's why I'm not sending my daughter to university. You send a young, pure girl to university, she's going to get bombarded with messages of promiscuity, not from the boys, but from the girls. This girl's doing it. That girl's doing it. This girl's doing it. That girl's doing it. And I have to compete with these girls that are having sex with the boys. So it was about bringing them together and then showing them through TV, music, media, movies. They had to show them, this is how you act like a slut. This is what sexual liberation looks like. And it didn't take them very long. The 1960s, it was complete. They taught women that it was the pill and the abortion, contraception and abortion, along with the media, were all weapons that were deployed in order to pervert women. And so here we are, and they called it so-called feminism, and it had something to do with their liberation, but it has been nothing but slavery to sin.
I think the internet has really, really put that dynamic on steroids now as well, with social media, like TikTok. And I can't even, like, obviously we focus on men mostly, especially on my channel, but I can't even imagine what, let's say, a 16-year-old girl is going through when you've said, okay, you mentioned on university or high school or college, where she sees all of her friends getting praised for being promiscuous and for being slutty. But now it's no longer the few hours that she's actually in the institution of school, for example. She comes home and she's then still bombarded with the TikTok from her friends where she's like shaking her ass and she gets more likes, and likes equals validation and love these days. And so there's no escape for these people. I think the same dynamic for men, probably a bit less, because I think it is true that men tend to use those type of platforms a little bit less. But for women especially, like, it's so interesting because feminism has seemed to trick them to, in a weird way, show them that their value comes from sex, even though that's what their advertisement for feminism disagrees with. It's like it's a very controversial, right. Like I can't even wrap my mind around it in a certain sense, but it's essentially said to women, okay, you're not sex objects, that men can't treat you like sex objects, but make sure you act like a sex object to get more validation. I think that's definitely sort of like compounded on top of each other with, like, for example, the software developers who are making these apps with algorithms, which then, of course, the algorithm is just people's attention. And of course, people's attention is going to be way more on ass than it is on like a good quality woman sat on TikTok reading the Bible or something. And so then these same girls only ever get the role model of the ass shaker. And that just seems to just push us down this like nuanced, polarized dynamic that I think these like young people are facing. And that's where they're ending up at our channel. Like the young men, I think one of the main issues that you must see on your channel is like the young men are just struggling with relationships and dating especially. And that's definitely in part with a lack of like father's wisdom. They've never seen like their father like speak, like love their mother, and they've never seen like, the uncle who gives them the sex advice. So that we don't have that type of like family dynamic these days. But it's also in a very twisted, overvalued way for feminine intimacy, where now, again, the girls who are shaking their ass are getting so much like attention and validation that so many more girls want to be like that. And then, of course, all these like sexless guys are just looking to these girls, and that's all they see. These type of guys, they probably won't have enough confidence to go up and have like a real conversation with these girls. And so this is all they see of these women, is just ass shaking. And so in a weird way, like the cycle of feminism has literally just compounded their original issue that they wanted to fight against, which was, okay, women are being seen as sex objects and we should liberate them. Right. But now the only way that we can see so many women is quite literally that they are sex objects, that they are literally just posting like this type of content online, they're behaving in a certain way. And I really think that young men are struggling heavily in the dating market. And I think that I've been saying, at least on my channel, that I think that's the most important part of life. I think that getting into like the good quality relationship, I'm not old enough yet, but I just, haven't gotten into the point of making my own family yet. But just even having like a good quality partner to be with is it's like a life-changing experience, which seems to make all the other experiences in life worthwhile. And it's so sad that everything that we've discussed today ends up with these men feeling unable, like incapable of getting into these loving relationships.
Yeah. Earlier you asked about, who's supposed to fix this, men or women? And my conviction is that it's men. Just like Adam in the garden, who didn't fulfill his responsibility by protecting his wife, he had to backtrack and make right. And so it is with us. And I would say the number one quality that's required of a man in order to help all men turn this boat around, if that's even possible for us. Like I say, I think it's just going to be a hand of God that's going to restore things back to normal. But what we have to do is become intolerant. We're too tolerant, and it's pleasing to be tolerant of women when they're shaking their asses. But if we're ever wanting to restore the family, restore gender polarity, restore good relationships between one another, I'm going to say this colloquially, but men have to stop being simps. Stop giving women your validation. Stop having sex with every woman that throws her legs open. And not only that, and this sounds rough, not only be intolerant, but speak out against it. Say as men that we won't tolerate this anymore, right? We have preferences too. Women have all the preferences in the world. I want a 6'6" man to make six figures, and everybody applauds and says, you go, girl, don't settle. But I think men need to restore our sense of dignity by having standards for these women. And I'm going to throw one out there that people aren't going to like. I take it that you're a Muslim. Is this correct?
I was raised this one, not exactly over the last adult life, but it's something
there's one
that
promise that I believe in my study. You know, I look at Islam sometimes. One of the promises, right? One of the great things that's promised are virgins in heaven. Is that correct?
That's right.
But we don't have to wait. We don't have to wait. I think that if we hold women to a higher standard and stop simping, that it would be righteous, right, dignified, and good for men and women if we didn't tolerate promiscuity amongst women. If I'm going to marry a woman, I much rather her be a virgin. Science has shown us that the more sex partners a woman has, not a man, because we're different, right? That's one of the things we have to acknowledge. Men and women are different. And I'm not saying promiscuity for men is good, but it's far more damaging to the emotional state, mental state, and spiritual state of a woman. She's ravaged internally, not just through the twat. She's ravaged in her soul and her. I watched a funny clip from Chris Rock the other day. He said, he's making a joke. She said, girls say they want a good guy, but they don't. They want a bad guy. They want an asshole, he said. And so he said, but I'm a good guy. So that's a problem for me, because when I get with a girl after she's been with the bad guy, because they have to get the bad guy first, then they find the good guy. Not only do I get his leftovers, but now I got to be her psychologist, because I have to deal with all of the pain that she's associated with riding that cock carousel and being what some guys call a alpha widow, right? Why is that? How is that fair to a man? And how is it fair to a woman that now you have psychological problems because you were out there being promiscuous, and now I got to deal with you. I got your sloppy seconds. You're a leftover, but now you got problems. We should stop tolerating it. And the only way we can legitimately stop tolerating it is stop fornicating. We are so easily led by the penis. Any pretty girl that walks by, we will tolerate all kinds of bad behavior if she'll let us have sex. And women know this. We validate them every time we simp for them. So we really have to do, like some of my Muslim friends have told me is tradition in some of the parts of the culture, turn your eyes away. These women walk this way, turn your eyes away. Look down and turn away. Delete all those chicks from your social media. Do not look at them. Do not give them any validation whatsoever, much less even a little bit of your eyesight. Don't look. When we stop paying attention, we stop giving them validation, when we stop tolerating their bad behavior, they will change. They will change because they'll realize that this ain't working. We're not even getting the validation of double tap likes and hearts in social media because men are ignoring us. I think MGTOW as a movement has credibility in that you're not going to fix women by trying to fix women. You fix women by not tolerating their bad behavior.
The counterpoint that comes to my mind is then for every man who has standards and who doesn't tolerate certain traits in women, there's 1,000 men who would throw themselves at any crumb of pussy. And so Is it going to make a difference if there's, let's say, there's 3 billion, okay, let's say like there's 2 billion like of age men, and let's say a few million of us become intolerant. Is it going to make a difference when essentially those women will just slightly lower their standards to the next level of men?
I think where we go, the women who know will follow. So you're not going to get them all. I'm not going to get all the guys with this. The kind of things I'm saying right now, I know maybe 5%, maybe 10% of the men are going to say, okay, Elliot, I'm going to try that. Most aren't. And I'm aware of that. And I'm okay with that. I know that most people is going to go in one ear, out another, or they'll even disdain me and hate me for saying so. All right, this guy, Elliot, who's he say this? So I'm not interested in everybody. And just like as a man looking for women, you're not interested in all of them. You're interested in the ones that know your position, know your stance, know your value, know your boundaries, and not only will accept that, she craves it, because deep down inside, women actually crave strong men. They say they want a weak man, right? Let me put it this way. They'll interact more with weak men, meaning both types, men that they can manipulate with sex, right? And men that give them attention. They think they want that. But really, when it boils down to it, and they usually figure it out when it's way too late. That's why I'm a fan of marrying young or finding a young girl when you're young, when you're a little bit older. They're there. They'll be out there. They are going to be like, where have you been my entire life, you good, strong man who is the type of man that my daddy never was and the world never showed me? We will be like a delicacy. Like, we'll be like, wow, like that's a unique breed of men. And I think that we could stand in that, especially if you know what we're doing and do it consciously and we do it together. I think we could even at some point when this world fractures, create communities. I see people doing it already, creating communities where we are now 9 times out of 10, they're religious communities. 9 times out of 10, the man isn't the authority, but God the Father is. And so one of the ways that I think that we will ultimately need to go and will go is a return to the Father, a return to God. And when a woman sees a man has that kind of faith, that he's not willing to bend his values because he's made in the likeness of image of the pattern that he's following, and that he's a faithful man, she will fall in line. I talk a lot about a man's authority in the family, right? And it seems as if I'm saying men need to just be bullies, right? Just be bullies, right? We're bigger, we're stronger, let's do what we want to do. But that's not necessarily the case. It's a subtle authority that comes from above. When a man acknowledges God the Father and lives his life in accordance with his law, natural law, women feel safer. They can trust a man better who's not resting on his own authority. So, this conversation about the fathers, right? And fatherlessness. I know your podcast is about fatherlessness, but we can't speak about fatherlessness without talking about godlessness.
That was a very, very good point. And there's so many things to unpick there. That your mindset with this, that we don't need everyone to change. We don't need every man to, turn the tides of society, but the select few. Like we've known this from the start of both of our channels, that maybe 5%, maybe 10% of the guys who are watching this will actually go on to implement some of the things that we say. We knew for a fact that the majority of guys, even just the guys who are watching our stuff, will just kind of, they'll turn one eye, they'll watch a video or so and they'll like it and they'll say, oh wow, this video changed my life, but they're just lying or something. But there's a certain few guys who will have the discipline to go out and implement it. And I almost had like a limiting belief to your advice just a few minutes ago, but now I can really see it as working, because if you start with yourself first and you make yourself into that strong, masculine, intolerant man with standards, like you said, it's almost like the women who don't fit in that criteria of your standards, they'll just be invisible. You won't even look at them. You couldn't imagine a guy who is like that strong masculine man who is looking at ass pictures on Instagram. You wouldn't be obsessing over the fitness models. You wouldn't be like staring at them, because that's just not what you're no longer into that. And so automatically that type of man is probably going to be religious. He's probably going to be spending time in the church or in the mosque. That type of man is going to be in the gym a lot, and he's going to be doing quite high value quality habits. He's automatically going to meet a girl who fits into that criteria, and she's also going to be looking at the world with disgust and thinking like, oh, there's actually girls out here who have sex, and like, well, that's how you meet them. The issue is that I think as men, especially with the modern day, like easy access to porn and everything, we've got at the click of our fingers, we've got everything we want. It's almost like we want a guarantee before we commit to delaying gratification, doing the hard thing. Like, okay, like Elliot, you promised that I'm going to get my wife, right? You promise if I stop watching porn, if I stop looking at ass, I'll get my wife. So we feel like we need the guarantee because we've got the other side right now. We've got the porn and we've got the casual sex right now. And I think it is that level of risk that we have to take as men to thrust ourselves into that like a new style of life where we hold women to like a higher standard than we've ever done before. And that's something that I've been trying to preach just on my recent videos. A lot of the points that I've made in this video I just made, you mentioned as well, where I said that the studies show that if she's a virgin, you'll have the highest. I think that was, from what I saw, the highest correlator with relationship success, and all of the highest correlators with the chance of divorce was the new age feminism stuff. It was like the woman making a lot more money. It was the woman having a modern friend who then divorced. It was the woman having a high body count. And it sounds very like misogynist and hateful to say these things. I don't think that we're saying it out of hate or resentment or anything. I honestly think that we're saying it like out of love. Like I see men like us like excited to try and like help people. We're not saying this like, to put women down, and it can be very easy to be brandish like that. But this is out of love to those women. This is out of love to say like, yes. I don't want to sound like a smart ass, but it seems like from the research that I've looked at and from the accounts of older women, then, if I'm talking to a woman right now, it seems like you guys might be going down the wrong path. It's just, and it upsets me because everyone's lied to you and you don't even realize it, that you've been pushed more and more into like the value of your sexuality. And now with the modern day, like OnlyFans, like you've been degraded, that your body and your sexuality is worth $9 a month now.
Right. Mm-hmm. I just to continue on that line of thought, I love women. I married my high school girlfriend. I have 3 daughters. I have a great relationship with my mother. My parents stayed together and I love my mom. I love women, but out of my love, I have to be stern and I have to be obvious and I have to be upfront and I have to say the truth, because it's not love to allow someone you love to continue down to the path of perdition. You have to stop them, and out of love, say, stop, wait a second, look around. This is not working. No matter what you feel about it or what the world's telling you, the statistics show, and men know, women know in our heart that this is not right. Women know that promiscuity is not right. That's why they'll always lie about their body count, right? You ask a man about how many women he slept with, they'll inflate it, right? Because men are different. You ask a woman how many men she slept with, she'll deflate it. Why? Oh, I don't want to be judged. Well, are you doing something that's worthy of being judged negatively against? Well, yeah. Well, then don't do that so you won't have to lie. But they know. They do know. See, deep down inside, they know that there's something not right. But no one, particularly older women, have not shown them, because we're about 2 generations into this. The hippie generation that defied their parents were the first rebels, and then they raised daughters to follow in their footsteps. And men have fallen right in line with lockstep with the feminist agenda. One example in particular, and this is my opinion, I don't understand these men that send their daughters away to university. Why would I send my daughter away somewhere to be lunch meat for a pack of wolves? And then for what? To be perverted by the education system that teaches them to hate men, right? So they go away. And I heard so many stories about this, of men that send their daughters away to college. They come back sluts and feminists. Even that's a contradiction, right? It's like you hate men, but they using men up. They're using themselves up. So men, again, this is just my opinion. Maybe I'm a bad guy as a result. Don't send your daughters to where they're going to be perverted, right? University doesn't provide anything for them anyway, unless they want to compete with men. And if they want to compete with men, they're going to have a hard time in a marriage. My opinion, out of the love for my daughters, is to show them their mother's example and teach them how to be feminine girls that will be good wives and mothers. I couldn't have any greater pride from the outcome of my children's life than for them to have healthy families. If she becomes a CEO, she becomes top entrepreneur, she becomes, all these great things that the world, which really they just want you to be tax slaves, are doing, would pale in comparison to, wow, you're a great wife, you're a great mother, you're raising a great family. Do you really want to change the world? Train those children right. But no, instead, they send their kids off to day school, to the public school indoctrination system, and then they go and make it in the world. And I understand, look, people, this is an excuse a lot of people make. And the excuse is born out of the very problem that they're excusing. This idea that, it takes 2 people working to raise a family. It wasn't always that way. It takes 2 people to raise a family now because 2 people started deciding they wanted to raise a family and they wanted to work outside of the home. It takes 2 to work outside of the home. They say, Elliot, we can't do that. Well, if you live by that lie, you're just perpetuating what got us in this place to begin with. Women in the workforce flooded the workforce and brought wages down. It was bad for everyone. And so why not come home and do the most important work? Let your husband, look, we as men sacrifice as tax slaves. Let us sacrifice that. I don't want to work, right? but you do it because you love your family. Why not live under the mantle of a strong, working, providing man and do the best that you can with the children that you produce? Homeschool your kids. Keep a nice home, a clean home, a happy home. Feed your family. Serve your husband. But all that sounds like Chinese to these people. They don't understand it.
It's a very beautiful image to go back to that kind of, I'm saying back to that, obviously I've never experienced that life, but I can see the positives of that. And I can see how much women have been pushed away and insulted for having that as their dream, to be a wife and to be a mother. And like you said, there is no job. There is literally, you can look at the research, there is no job in comparison to the sacredness and the emotional well-being that these women will get from being mothers full-time. And
right.
That's one of the points you made, actually, was even before I got into like this space. I remember that was a thought that I used to have quite often. I was like, okay, sometime in the early 1900s, it was normal for one man to go out to work, come home at whatever time, and okay, that was the money for the family, all set. Then feminism pushed women into the workplace, and then it automatically adjusted so that now we need the woman's wage too. And that was like a very, very easy way to probably for the state to like screw over the family, because that was the man's job. And this way, at least the children got like a full-time caregiver and almost like a part-time caregiver. And we're so correctly polarized in our femininity and our masculinity energies. And then with the women being sent off to work, and it's like, okay, well, now the children need to be looked after. So let's make the school, let's send the children to school over the time. But then now the children are almost learning like a framework to then almost follow in the same footsteps of their now modern families. And like we can see this from the data, like we're so much richer in a certain sense, and we have more products and we have more like choices than ever. We're no happier. We're a little bit more depressed than we were in times of like the Great Depression, in times of war, and we're like worse off than they are.
Yeah, it's diabolical time.
I think we've covered a lot of great points, and I think this is a fantastic episode to start off this podcast with. I think I was pushing more into the idea of giving very, very specific advice for the individual, but I really like that the angle that we went for is actually explaining the historical relevance of all this and bringing in feminism as potentially the cause of the fatherless generation that we have. So to close up, Elliot, do you have any like last pieces of wisdom or advice circling back to that young man? If he's watching this right now, is there anything you want to say to him?
Well, one thing I did want to just kind of reiterate that you're pointing out in this conversation is that as men, we can't fight if we don't know who the enemy is. And I think that's why I think we have to call these enemies out. I think we're just swinging our sword at the wind if we don't know who to point it at. And this whole conversation about Bolshevism, Marxism, communism, feminism, as demonic technologies that have subverted our culture, I think is the first place, right? Like, if you're going to win a game, you got to know who your opponent is. Women aren't our opponent. I think that's an important thing. Women are not our opponent. We have been turned against each other. There is an enemy, and we have to call the enemy out. We got to see the enemy's plan and what the enemy has done and what the enemy continues to do if we're ever going to be able to fight this battle, this righteous fight, and win. So I will acknowledge that things are going to be tough. Things are going to be tough. I wish, of course, I have a dream. I wish for all of you young guys out there that you could find a great woman to make her a great wife, and that you can have a great family with great children. I don't know any man that doesn't want that in his heart of hearts. It's a beautiful thing, right? Beautiful woman, caring woman, a feminine woman, and children, right? So I see why you would want that. I want that for you, but I'm not sure that's going to be available. But if we're truly generative men, we will think about our children and our children's children, or children of the future, by righting the wrongs today. We may be the generation that has to right the wrongs. You know, hard times create strong men. I think that's now, right? We're leaving good times that create weak men. We're leaving that. We're on the brink of hard times because the weak men created hard times. Everything that we're complaining about is because of weak men, right? The enemy can only win if the men are weak and weak men. So we're weak men, right? There were good times. We became lazy. We became effeminate. But now, and I think our conversation is a sign of the zeitgeist. It's a sign of the times. Men have to recognize what's going on and start making different decisions about how we're going to live our lives. And if we can see that change in our own lives in this generation, that would be great. Chances are we're going to see a lot of pain and a lot of suffering and a lot of fighting. And it's going to be tough. But you know what that does, right? Hard times. Embrace the hard times, fella. Embrace the hard times. This is what I want. That's my message. Embrace the hard times that you're living through right now. Embrace the hard times that are unfolding, because why? We need your generation to be the next strong men that lead us right. I have hope for Generation Z. I think Gen Z, because it's the Z, right? It's the last generation. You guys are the ones that are going to pick up your swords because you've seen the ills of our past. And even if it means that you got to fight to your death and leave a bloody legacy, you're going to be the ones that turn this boat around and bring us to this next horizon.
Embrace the hard times. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Elliot.
brother, because it makes strong men. It's the only way to make strong men is struggle.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time. Now, boys, Elliot has a huge catalog of videos on his channel. He's been doing YouTube for a very long time, and I have linked his channel in the description of this video. So if you scroll down right now and click on that link, you'll be able to see his channel. If you show him some support, subscribe. And like I said at the start of the video, a lot of his videos are based on this idea of becoming like a strong masculine man. And I've personally learned a lot from that. So Elliot, I appreciate your time very, very much. I'm very grateful that you came on and you became our first online guest. And I hope you have a fantastic night.
My pleasure, Hamza. Keep up the good work, bro.